evening. Welcome. I'm Katie Dunn, Director of Educational Planning here at Prep Matters, and I am delighted to welcome you to tonight's town hall meeting. We know that you have many questions about college and college admissions, and I am super pleased tonight to hear directly from those who have lived through it most recently. Throughout the webinar, we invite you to please use the Q&A function to ask questions of our panelists. You will also see that you have the option of upvoting a question to emphasize that you are also interested in the answer. I will try to keep a close eye on the Q&A box so we can guide the conversation. Tonight, we have invited three fantastic high school seniors, or maybe very recent high school graduates, I haven't kept track of all the dates, to share their experience of the college admissions process and to help us unpack some of the myths, challenges, and lessons learned in order to help the class of 22 and the class of 23 start off in the strongest way they can. We are also going to ground tonight's conversation in some insights shared by another one of our students who was unable to make it tonight, but who wanted to help our younger students learn from their experience. So I'm going to invite Jamie and Anna and Lulu to turn on their cameras. I know that in a virtual learning year, that's the worst thing for an adult to ask you to do, but we are very grateful you are here tonight. And Maureen Delaney, educational counselor here at Prep Matters, is going to kick us off by reading some insights from Anushka Dar, and then I will introduce our panelists and ask each of them to respond to the idea of giving advice to some juniors. Maureen, get us started.
Great. Thank you, Katie. So Anushka really wanted to share her advice after going through a very busy year, and she really wholeheartedly wanted to be here, but she's immersed in graduation festivities. So here we go with some of these nuggets from Anushka. So Anushka says, it would be great or amazing if you get what you want, but sometimes the unexpected is better. So expect the unexpected when it comes to your college search. She had a plan she applied ED, had that plan in place, and things turned out differently for her, but she did not get into her ED1 school. But what happened following that, the options really opened up a new world to her, one that she didn't expect. So she is very happy. She says, number 2, admissions can be really random. It's a mixed bag. So I learned to recognize, as she says, that I did everything I could do, and I had an amazing time doing it. If I didn't get in, I thought, this is on them. I am worth it to me. Someone else will see me, and I will get into the schools that are right for me. So she said it's difficult to see the mindset of the colleges and to understand how they're making decisions. So don't try. Just know that you do your best. And if you didn't get in, there are many qualified candidates. So the next is she sees juniors suffering and really being overwhelmed with dread and worry regarding this process. And these are Anushka's words, it's really not that deep, okay? She says that the college process is not something to worry about. You need to really manage your time. And she really stresses the idea of doing your best. As you sit down to prepare your essay, really be focused and present while you're doing this work. Get things done early, by October, hopefully. And so time management is really key. So the next one is, here's a heads up that the essays become repetitive. So as far as essays in the early round, meaning your early action, your early decision, she saw a pattern in the prompts, such as, what is your favorite activity? Elaborate for 250 words, or talk about your impact on your community. So she said, these prompts will appear again and again. So she said, write well so that you can do it once. And again, back to that focus and time management and really doing your best from the start. So write a really good essay during the summer and then follow up with essays and know that they will come again and again. So the next one is have your Common App essay. So essentially you have it down during the summer. This is the foundation of how you're going to move forward with your application. So you really need a strong essay. And then the next one is don't worry so much that you aren't making good memories during your junior year. Remember time management because you want to spend time with your friends. This is your last year, your senior year. And the only regret she has is that she didn't spend more time. So that's her heads up to juniors. And she says, this is something small as far as advice, but it's really good to have a lot of ideas. She said, there are going to be word counts and you're going to don't pay attention to the word counts, just write according to your ideas because you can edit and too many ideas is not a problem. So you want to write a lot and then edit to your strongest statement. And the next one, this is a great one. Don't compare yourself to other people. Everyone is so different. Don't look to see what other students are doing, where they're applying. It really doesn't matter where other people are applying. And no one is taking your spot. Remember, you are doing your best and you will find your spot. And then the last one is read and proofread your Common App carefully. And don't forget to go for scholarships. She did share with me, and she said it's okay to tell you, do fill out the Common App really carefully. She put in the wrong birth date and had to call the Common App and have them change it. So she said, be really careful about filling in those blanks on the Common App. So that's from Anushka, and she's off to UVA next year, and we wish her all the best.
Wonderful. That gets us started in exactly the spirit we're thinking of. Now that you're all here, you realize there were probably some great moves you made and maybe some not awesome moves you made. And we want to think about all of that. So I'm going to turn to the panelists. Our first panelist tonight is Lulu Ortega Beza, joining us from Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. And I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself by sharing where you plan to attend college and sharing your biggest piece of advice for juniors just about to start. So Lulu, you're up.
Yeah, so thank you, Katie. My name is Lulu, and I will be attending the University of Maryland, College Park next fall, and I'm really excited. I actually have orientation next week, so it's all coming really soon. The biggest piece of advice that I have has kind of been said in a way, but really make sure to start your personal statement and essays over the summer. It's actually pretty simple. Right now, you can just Google or search like personal statement prompt, and you can start looking at the different prompts, because I would really recommend writing multiple drafts for them and also making sure that you leave enough time in between each draft to really soak in what you're writing and make sure that you really like what you're writing. And then I know for the personal statement, there's multiple sort of choices and prompts to choose from. And so you may be wondering, which one should I choose? Like, which one's the best one? And I would just say there really is no like best one. I know a lot of my different friends chose different prompts, and I would just choose the one that feels more personal and that you sort of get an emotional reaction to it, which it doesn't have to be like a happy or a sad one. It just has to be you feeling something about it, because that will be reflected in your writing.
I love that. And all of those people who chose different prompts, they're all going to college. So it wasn't about the prompt. Next, we welcome Jamie Gordon, joining us from Walt Whitman High School. Jamie, welcome. What is your advice for us, and where are you headed to school next year?
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm going to Vanderbilt University in Nashville. And my biggest piece of advice is, if you are unsure about what you want in a school, or like you're not really sure what kind of school you want. I'm a really indecisive person, so like I didn't really know what I wanted, or what I thought I wanted changed kind of halfway through. So if you're that type of person, or just don't know what you want, I would suggest applying to a couple different types of schools. So if you don't know, maybe apply to both liberal arts and like big public schools like Michigan. Like, it's like, if you don't know, kind of try to vary your application schools, because then if your mind changes halfway through, you're not kind of like stuck with one type of school, and you can, kind of decide later. So yeah, that's my advice.
And because you change a lot during this process, right?
Definitely.
Dare I say you continue growing up a little senior year in high school. And so you might want something different when you know yourself a little bit better. Great. And finally, I am delighted to welcome Anna Kolbashny, also graduating from Walt Whitman High School. Anna, where are you headed next year? And what's your piece of advice?
I'm going to Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon. Wow, I guess my one piece of advice to juniors. I think one step at a time, take the whole process one step at a time. I think if I in the summer of my like going into senior year, if I like looked at the whole like scope of it all, like the whole process, I would have like really panicked. But I just said I'm only going to worry about the essay right now, like the main Common App essay. I'll handle the supplementals as they kind of come along, but that's one thing. Once I check that off, I'll get to the main Common App and I'll do it piece by piece. And for me, breaking that up was easier and made kind of things kind of put the puzzle together, made it make more sense. I think just like I think what people don't talk enough about is like handling the rejection part, which is something that like there's this like weird gap period between the time that you submit your application, the time that you hear back from the school, and that could be a month and a half to 2 months of just like dead space and nothing. And you can kind of really start to, and if it's in the middle of winter and everyone starts to hear back even as soon as like October or November, and you can start to look around and just be kind of like, wow, everyone is committing to schools, they're hearing back from their EDs, and it can just feel like really overwhelming of I'm not getting responses, I already got rejected from 2 schools, everyone's accepting, what's going on, and that's normal, that's okay, and that waiting period, everyone experiences it, but you know, find your friends, hold on to your friends in those moments, because we kind of got through that all together. And I think with handling the rejection part, I think my friends and I kind of adopted this mindset pretty early on, which was like, it was just not meant to be. And that's like really difficult to just like say out loud. It's a difficult pill to swallow. And like after all, like the tears and the anger, the frustration, like the shock of like the rejection or the wait list kind of passes through you, to just sit down and say, you know what, it was just not meant to be. I was not the one, and that's okay. And yeah, rejection, the wait list, it's normal, and everyone's gonna experience that. But I think if someone had told me that earlier, I think I would have really benefited from that. So I think prepare for rejection, and be ready to hear no's. Yeah, that's it.
I love that, especially about that waiting period, because you're right. All you've been thinking about is college for so many months. And then suddenly like it's out of your hands and you have to just put it away. Great. So I want to jump to a couple of you mentioned your essays, and I would love to dig in a little bit to that. And maybe that's just because that's where my head is right now, because I'm meeting with a ton of juniors and they're all launching that process. And I want to jump back to Lulu again for a second and then to Anna, because both of you kind of pointed out the value of starting now. And Lulu even mentioned revisions, which is important to me as both an English teacher and a college counselor. So I would love if you could sort of real talk, give folks a sense of, you know, how long you worked on that essay, approximately how many revisions you maybe gave it, you know, and this is different for everyone. Did your topic change as you were working through it, and kind of how that process played out for you? So we'll start with Lulu and then we'll go to Anna, and then Jamie can jump in.
Yes, I would definitely say it's always an ongoing process. So when I first started looking at prompts, I wasn't really sure about what I wanted to write. And I think that's something a lot of people experience. You know, in school, we're taught how to write, you know, formal essays, but you're never really taught to reflect on yourself. And this is a really personal essay. So I think first and foremost, that was something I had to just understand, that it's different from school writing. And also the fact that it doesn't really benefit you to try to present yourself in a way that's not truthful. Colleges want to know about you and what you're interested in, what you like to do, what you find sort of makes you you. So I think once I figured that out, it really helped me sort of hone into my topic. But I probably had to do maybe 3 different drafts on different topics before I found the one that I really liked. And I wrote about music and learning languages because I'm originally from Mexico. So that was like a huge part of me learning a new language, but it's something very unique and something that was not the first thing I thought of when writing an essay. So I would say brainstorm a lot of different facets of your life, a lot of different things that you like, not necessarily that other people know you for, but just that you like. And after you go from there, I'm sure there'll be different things that stick out to you and that you'll feel really attached to and you'll really like. I know when I was writing my essay, it always sort of made me smile at certain parts, or it made me sort of reassured that this was the version I wanted to present. And yeah, no matter the outcome, I was just really happy and felt that the essay represented me. So it definitely took, 3 or 4 revisions after it to edit it and get some advice as to where to like pause, where to emphasize certain things. But I would just say for me, the hardest part was finding that topic because after I sort of went through that process, I knew a little bit more about where I was going.
I love the idea of your essay making you smile. That is a really neat sign and not always one we think about when we're dealing with kind of the stress and pressure part of it. All right, Anna, walk us through your Common App process, which I happened to get to witness, so I know you did some cool stuff.
Yeah. I had the pleasure and kind of privilege, I guess, of working with a woman, one of my friend's moms, Michelle Braffman, who's a novelist from the area, and she teaches like basically an essay writing class for like college kids over the summer. And I did it with her, and it was amazing and so enlightening. And her whole thing is just like finding your voice really in this whole thing, because you are like in a way narrating your own story through this. And in I kind of like to think of it as like you're kind of trying to build a personal brand a little bit and just like really sell yourself to these people. um and I ended up writing mine. I mean, I wrote the first draft pretty early, I want to say like June kind of. So the idea of the pre-pandemic life was still kind of fresh in my head, and we were kind of just entering this summer quarantine. And I wrote about like my eyelashes and this routine I do of putting on mascara every day. And pretty much everyone I spoke to was like, don't write about that. Like, that's just not like, it's not topical. Like, what can you, it just sounds really like, I don't know, like selfish, I guess, and like whatever, I don't know. And it was and then I kind of was sat on it for, I didn't even touch the essay, I think, for like 2 months. And I came back to it and contacted Michelle again and just like completely took a whole new perspective on it and used this routine that I did every morning before, COVID and stuff, of like every day wake up, put on this, put on this makeup and stuff, whatever. And then talked about like kind of just like confidence stuff and change it to more like vision. It was a whole different thing. My point being, like, I started writing this one thing in the beginning of the summer thinking this was going to be my essay, and then 2 months later, after not even touching it, I came back to the same essay and had a whole new idea for it. And it was that break period that I think I just like forgot about the entire essay itself, which was maybe not the best, but like kind of just I grew in those months, and then came back to it, and I had a whole new idea of where I wanted to go with this and what I wanted to do. And that was really helpful for me because that change of perspective just completely changed things. So I think sitting on the idea, like if you don't need to get it done in one sitting, or just do the essay in 2 weeks. And that's like, I think a big thing is like, I didn't really set a deadline for myself for that thing. Again, started in the summer, really ended close to the time my application was due. And that's okay to have that, all that time to figure it out. I think that's like important. Yeah.
And what I love about that story, Anna, is the topic itself kind of didn't change. You were still talking about the routine, but your capacity to reflect on it and provide this insight into, like Lulu said, who you really are, who your authentic self is, that's what grew. And I tell kids that all the time. The actual topic, colleges are less interested in the stuff than in what you are able to do and how you talk about the stuff. So, and Jamie, how about you? Where does your Common App fit into this timeline and these revisions?
So I actually got to work with Maureen with my essay, and she was great because when I came into it, I thought I was doing it right and was not doing it right. So it's a super personal essay, and I kind of didn't really get that. And like my dad tried to have a very big part in like me writing it. And the advice that Maureen just kept saying was like, your dad needs to not even be in the room. Like when you're writing this, like it is you, like you need to get very personal. So like it's very hard to do that if like you kind of are trying to write it with your parent. It was a bad idea. So we had like, I mean, I had like 5 drafts, I would like to say, because my essay kind of really changed. The topic was the same, but kind of like how Anna talked about it, like I kind of came at it with a different mindset and like a different reflection, I guess, if you will. And if I, were to give any advice on the essay, it's like try to, instead of just talking about a subject or a topic that you like I talked about, me and my friend, try to like reflect on it. So like, don't just say like, oh, I did this, I like this. Be like, I like this because, or I did this and here's what I learned. And this is what it taught me. So it's like, try to reflect and kind of give it a level of like nuance that is not just like so two-dimensional. And I think that took time, definitely. Like I was learning so much about myself through the whole process. So definitely what Anna said, like write it, come back to it so much later, just to give yourself time to like really reflect in your essay. And that will really make it good, because I think if you write it in 2 days, it will sound like you wrote it in 2 days. But if you wrote it in 2 months, you can really kind of bring in a bunch of different ideas. And don't get too attached to things. I had a very problem, like I got very attached to certain ideas in my essay or certain parts, and Maureen definitely had to help me kind of cut those bits down. But it's definitely useful, because if you get too attached, sometimes you aren't able to make it the best it can be. So just try to keep an open mind and reflect.
Spoiler alert, your teachers also know when you wrote it in 2 days. That's not just college essays. I want to stick with another thought that Jamie just pointed out. And also, actually, before I say that, I want to say all 3 of you focused on this idea of giving it some time. And I gotta say, that's actually not something I usually emphasize with students. And I think I'm going to add that into my list of advice pieces, because it sounds like it was really critical for all of you. So Jamie mentioned how sometimes we have parents, and sometimes they're awesome, and sometimes they are less helpful than they think they are. There's a ton of parents on this call, and I have to say, one of the questions I get the most often from families, from parents, is, what's my role here? How can I best support my child, who I love and think is amazing and think should be able to get into every college everywhere? What can I do that is helpful? And what maybe are the things that I might be tempted to do that maybe are less helpful? So since Jamie just gave us a less helpful one, I'm gonna let him off the hook for a second while he thinks of what is the helpful one. So we'll come back to him. Anna, do you want to give us a sense of kind of where parents can fit into this process and be really, really helpful and positive for their student?
Yeah, absolutely. I really lucked out with, my mom is a writer and a journalist, and so her job in this process, I guess, was just editing. It was reading my work and just giving me straight up critiques, redlining everything, and sitting with me through and talking through some of this stuff, because I found like I just for me, I guess in my case, it just helped to like speak to her. I'd be in a hole, in a rut about an idea, and I would sit down and we would just talk it out, and she would just type as I spoke. And that was really clarifying for me. And that worked with our kind of relationship, or in that like partnership in that. And she wasn't writing my essay, she was writing ideas, and I would fill in, I would go back and write the whole thing, and then she would come back, I'd leave the room and she'd edit. And then but not everyone's mother is an editor-in-chief of a magazine, so I don't think that's, if you don't have that access, but any person can edit anything, and like peer revisions. But that was, in my case, like my mom's role in that was the extent of that, I think. And she also helped set that boundary of like, I'm not going to write this, I'm going to just edit if you want me to. And that was really helpful, because it was, at the end of the day, like they were my ideas, but she did help me put them on the paper in a sense. So that was really useful, I thought.
And it sounds like you were really leading those meetings. I'm stuck, I'm throwing stuff at the wall, and I need to find someone to kind of talk to. And then you were able to say, hey, this is something I would like from you, Mom. So that's great. Lulu, how about you? Tell us what was helpful or less helpful from your parents?
I had an interesting experience because, sort of like I mentioned before, both my parents are from Mexico. So they weren't familiar with the college process or college essays or anything. So something that they did that was really nice, in my opinion, was give me space. I really took on the whole role of writing essays and applying to college. So I personally like that. I think it might be different for obviously every person and their personalities, but maybe one thing is to set boundaries. I know it was really, really helpful for me to go to dinner with my parents and not talk about the college essay process, talk about how their day was or something different, just so that I wasn't stuck in that bubble of my thoughts and all the things that I had to do. But at the same time, set the boundaries of, when you do feel like you need support, like when I was submitting my common apps, everyone had to be around the table, like supporting me. So making sure that, regardless of how much your parents know about the process or how much they want to be involved in it, just sort of let them know of how they can help you, ways they can support you, and also give you space to do your work.
I'm so glad I asked this question. Jamie, how about you?
Yeah, so coincidentally enough, both my parents are also journalists. So yes, yes, they did help me a lot with editing. And it was actually nice because my mom was a little oblivious to the college process, and that's okay. Both your parents don't need to be in on it. Like that would be the worst thing ever, I think, if both of them were in on it, because you just don't need that. So what it was nice was my mom was kind of oblivious to what I was writing and like what kind of like aspect I was focusing in on for a certain school or for a certain essay. So she could kind of give very unbiased advice. Whereas like my dad, who kind of had like Anna said, like was walking me through, like kind of helping me develop ideas. He kind of like what would end up happening was like he would create an idea of what he wanted to see. And then like if he didn't see me writing that, he'd kind of be like, oh, I don't know about that. So it was like nice to have a kind of unbiased parent who could kind of give you advice. But also not on the topic of essays, but just on the topic of like parents helping. A really big helpful tip that my parents gave me is like connecting me with people. I think like a lot of the decisions, it was funny, I got to talk to a lot of different people from a lot of different schools, like advisors or admissions counselors or just professors at certain schools. And that helped me a lot decide like if I actually wanted to go to that school or not. I think a lot of times I would be on like the phone with someone like a professor or like, some advisor there at a certain school. And I'd kind of be like, I actually don't want to go here. Like based on what this person is telling me, like, I think I'm good. Like, I don't think I'm going to apply. So that could be really helpful, but then also that can be helpful in another way where they can give you advice. Like when you're talking to someone there, you can get advice about how to apply or what to talk about. So just kind of getting contacts from your parents, like maybe they know a friend who went to that school or they know someone who works there. That was super helpful with my parents.
Can I just give a shout out to Jamie's parents, because from my perspective, they were really supportive and also honored your decisions ultimately, and were very respectful of your process. So just to say.
Anna, did you want to jump back in there?
Yeah, Jamie said something that just made me think of oftentimes, and I was so lucky this was not my case, but some parents can kind of try and make their child apply to the same school that they went to for graduate or undergrad or medical law school, just because they went there, they had a great experience what I had success there, you'll love it there, we're alumni, we give money every year, they love us, etc.
Yep.
I guess my advice would just be like, for that, like, I mean, you raised your child as an individual. They have their own mind, own interests, own passions, own hobbies and academic, dreams. And I'd say just kind of let that go. My mom went to a great school, and I think early on in the process, we talked, I think Katie and I, like, do I want to go to the school that she went to? And I ultimately was like, no, I don't want to even apply or do research at all into that school. And that was the end of that. My mom never pressed me about it again. Go to the school that I went to, and that was great. And I mean, that was actually kind of a weight off the shoulders. And I've spoken to a junior that I'm friends with at Whitman, and currently his parents are on him about attending the same school that they went to. And that's something that, like, yeah, I would avoid as much as you can. I know it's
Yep.
tempting, but
I worked with a wonderful young woman a couple years ago, and every time I talked to her, she had a new school on her list, and it was always my aunt went there, my academic dean went there, so all of these sort of adult mentors who suggested it to her, and I do that all the time. I love my college. I tell everybody to go there. And she just, felt sort of obligated to say yes to all of them. So we talked a lot about actually, they've all already gone to college. This is your turn. So you want to pick your spot. Let's think about that. How do you get those colleges on your list? I would love to hear. I think we often tell students like go research colleges, and it's a very abstract instruction that most of us kind of don't know how to approach. And so for some students, that's pretty anxiety producing. So I'd love to know what were the top few things that you were looking for as you searched for colleges and kind of how you went about it. And I think I haven't started a question with Jamie yet, so we're gonna go there.
All right. So what I did to start, I bought the like Fisk college book. That was like probably one of the most helpful books that I had, because a lot of my decision was based on like the culture of a school, and like that's kind of a confusing thing, but it's like what the students were like, how the student body kind of went about the experience there. Because that is just like what was really important to me, and I felt like was the biggest like factor in like what your experience would be like. So definitely research schools and liberal arts schools. I literally was like, Maureen, what is a liberal arts school? Like, what does that mean? And so it's definitely confusing, but a research school is like, it's normally like a school that has graduate students there. So it's like professors, faculty, and graduate students completing like research in like laboratories, like generally like every subject has research, but like it'll be like typically like sciencey majors. So if you're thinking about like a science, or like I'm doing psychology, so like that's, if I'm doing psychology and I'm thinking about applying to grad school, you probably need to do research. I would be surprised to see, and liberal arts schools don't necessarily always have research, because that's not always, but yeah, most of the time. So a research school is like, most schools do research, but you'll tell if a school calls itself like liberal arts, it's probably not a big research school. But my biggest like looking into schools was the Fisk book, because I literally would just like read the whole page on like what the school was like, how the students were. And this was like, I was like, oh, I'm like that. Like, I really like that. Okay, let me add it to my list. I also looked at like the surrounding areas. So like I was super into like city vibes. So I would be like, okay, let me look at all the schools in a city, and like, all right, which ones do I like? Which ones fit me? Which ones don't fit me? All right, I'm done with that city. Next city, what's the next one? So I kind of like went through geographical locations also, because that can definitely be a big thing. I was super into California too, so I was like looking at schools there. So think about like what you like if in like a dream world, like what you could have, like just think about it. Like this is your time to like go all out, and then kind of hone it in from there. And definitely get the Fisk book. It's like very inexpensive on Amazon.
And what I love about Fisk is that it focuses predominantly on student interviews and surveys.
Yeah,
and Jamie, you picked a great city. I mean, you have so much to explore. a lot of good things coming up for you. Lulu, how about you?
So my experience was really interesting and different because going into it, I discovered the major of speech, hearing, and language sciences. And so once I found that major, I sort of got stuck with it and I attached to it very much. And I was like, I want to study that in college. So something that in ways limited my college search was that major. So if you have a major or minor, make sure that the schools that you're applying to have that major or minor. And then something else that really helped me was to just go on the major website and you can see like a sample 4-year plan of students. And so I could see what junior year classes I would take with this major, what senior classes I would take. And a huge part of my particular major is sort of doing observation hours. So if you want to do like internships or internships or like networking opportunities, observation opportunities, whatever it is that you want to do, it's a great way to make sure that you will have time junior year and senior year to get those in. And ultimately that really helped me sort of narrow down my choices and make my decision because I could see which college was going to give me the most observation and hands-on experience, which is what I really wanted in a school. And also something that really helped me. I didn't know a lot of people that had gone to these universities. So just going to the major departments in your website, on the different websites, or just looking for emails on there, you can email different advisors and people, and they will put you in contact with students that went there, with professors. So you don't have to know these people, but you can just reach out to them, introduce yourself, and ask to get more information about them. So if you go to information sessions and you still have questions, or you just need more information to make your decision and make sure that school is right for you, feel free to just reach out to them. That's why they have all those phone numbers and resources on their website.
I love how different those answers were. And Anna, how about you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, just like ditto on everything they just said. I think for me, I kind of did almost all liberal arts schools because I kind of knew that was what I want to do. I kind of knew I didn't want to go to like a huge state school with like sports was the big thing because I am quite an performance art person, love theater, chorus, music, all of that stuff. And so all of like the Big Ten schools and all of the ones that had like the D1 football, and like I kind of could rule out like areas like of the South. A lot of the state schools in the South are centered around sports. Sorry, Jamie, I know you're going to Tennessee, but yeah, great school. So yeah, I just knew what I kind of wanted. I was like small liberal arts. Lewis and Clark has like 2,000 undergrad. It's incredible, same size as my high school. It's very small. And I think not all my schools were that size undergrad. But yeah, I think I just kind of knew I wanted someplace where like I didn't really know. I was like, I'm interested in sociology, but I don't know if that's what I want to major in. And I'm also, what if I want to study Russian or do something like that? And like, that's what really intrigued me about the fact that I could like so many different majors, and they have STEM classes and they have all of these humanities classes, and you could do theater. And that was a big, thing for me and stood out for me. I think it came down to ultimately location, because at first I was like, you know what, I'm fine with a small area. Maybe the community will just be amazing because you all rally around this small town. And I realized I grew up outside of DC, well, in Bethesda my whole life. Having that access to the city was something that I really loved, and I found that I really relied on. And so then the idea of living in Portland, or like a Portland suburb, but really close to the city, was huge, because city to me meant like a bigger culture community. Like there was like restaurants and sports teams and bars and internship opportunities that you won't find in like the country town. So yeah, for me it ultimately came down to location, but yeah, I think my general interests kind of led me to liberal arts.
And Portland is a very different kind of city for you, so you'll still get that new experience. I want to get to a couple of questions we have from the chat. One very big picture and one slightly more specific. So let's start with the more specific. What would be your advice in terms of when you should be done with SAT and ACT testing? Would anyone like to start? Jamie.
So I don't think that honestly matters. I mean, personally, I took my last exam like probably the last date you could. I think I had to like expedite my sending of scores to schools. I literally remember I had to just apply test optional to UMD because like I just couldn't get my score into the time that they wanted it. But like it all worked out in the end. So I would feel like just kind of, it takes a while to send scores, definitely. But if you are really satisfied with your score, like I would keep going until like I don't know what the exact like number of weeks it would take, but like you can kind of count up. I think it's like until like October is like you can probably take them, right? Yeah. I think my last one was literally like September, late September. So I think it doesn't matter. But if you want to be on the safe side, definitely probably like early September, I would guess. I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't really think that matters. So
I forgot that I muted myself to cough. Anna or Lulu, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say being in the pandemic when all this happened, it was really different for us. I think I was scheduled to take my SAT like in March, and it just kept getting pushed back. to October, to the point that I didn't even know if I really would have an SAT score by some of my November deadlines. And I took the test in October and got like a fine score that a lot of my schools were test optional. And so I was send it to some, didn't send it to others. And I was totally okay with that. And it worked out in the end. Yeah, I think it's, unless the score, I mean, some people really need that score to really help them out. For me, I'm not the best test taker, and for me, I knew that was not my strength on the entire application. I could put my strengths in other areas and show that off. So again, like Jamie said, I was not super worried about the test timing. I was just lucky I got a score before, some of my applications had to go in.
Absolutely. In 2020, that was a real gift. Lulu, tell us about your SAT journey.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with like SAT dates kept getting canceled, and I kept sort of studying, and then it didn't actually happen. So I would probably say, looking back personally, I probably would have just liked to, not stress as much as I did about the SAT. I think there was a point where I did get a score, and I think I should have just stopped at that point, since it was an okay score. So I think not really putting too much pressure on that SAT, because there gets to a point where it shouldn't really be the thing that stresses you out the most about in the process. And there are so many other opportunities in the application to sort of either say why you weren't able to take the SAT, or tell them more about you. So I think, just personally looking back, I wouldn't have stressed out as much as I did about the SAT, and I would just say that you can be done taking the SAT whenever you think you just did your best, and if you think you did your best already, then I think you can stop there.
Well, and what I like about and I love that you all have, again, very different answers for this, because it does, if it plays a different role in everyone's application, but also fall of senior year is exhausting and hard, even if you're not living through a pandemic. And so it is important to think about, all right, for me and my process, where do I want to put my energy? I only have a certain amount of energy. We've all discussed that we want part of it to be with your friends and other things in your life. And so, if it's worth it to you to keep going, you keep going. And if maybe it's not as much, you recognize that you haven't. And that is, I think, part of what test optional has given us, is you have a little more control over that process than you might have had in previous years. Now, from the chat, the very big picture question: what is something you know now that you wish you knew last fall, other than where you're going to college? Because that's probably something you wish you knew. And let's start with Anna.
Gosh, I was trying to think of something. Besides just the fact that like really everything works out in the end. I mean, everyone says that, and when you're in the middle of being stressed out, that's not the thing you want to hear. But it does. I think something I wish I knew. I don't know. I think what I said earlier about just like that weird break period of like,
Yeah,
you're not gonna, and I think being home, like being isolated in quarantine, we were like several months into online school. It was winter. It was just rough time for a lot of people. And it was just the whole year kind of just was a mess. And so, yeah, it was tough to get through that period of time, and it could feel very isolating just to see everyone on social media who was getting into schools, and you weren't hearing back. And I just think, like, yeah, it's okay to feel all that. And like something like I think I got into all the schools I got accepted from were my early action schools. And then after I heard back from them, there was another break period of time. And then when February rolled around, it was just like rejection, waitlist, rejection. And that was difficult to kind of swallow, because I was like 5-0 for like a good couple months. And then there's a month where you hear nothing. And then it's just like no more acceptances. and then after that, I think you just revisit, you sit down with the family, revisit all the schools, look over everything, start the research like the process a little bit again. Like I don't even think I visited Lewis and Clark until like April of this year, like when I had like 3 weeks to commit to a school, and I flew out to Portland and saw the campus for the first time. Um, and so yeah, those things, like it's okay. I guess I don't know. I think pace yourself with the process. I think I wrote some of the supplemental essays like pretty close to the deadline of the application, which looking back, I would say start the prep earlier. And like Lulu said, like copy and paste some of those things. Like Anushka, like they can really be like, you can repeat because the schools aren't sharing around what it's like, just really just repeat what you said. So if the prompt's the same. So yeah, I guess those are my things.
Great. Those are great. Jamie, how about you? What's one thing you wish you knew, now that you wish you'd known last fall?
There's a lot. Like you don't realize how much you learn in this process. And it's like I feel I want to give so much advice to like young people because I just feel like I learned so much like after it was over, and I'm like, oh God, like I wish I knew this before. So like definitely one of the big things is like you do not have to ED somewhere. I mean, I remember all my friends were EDing and I was like, oh, should I ED somewhere? Like there were like 3 occasions where I like almost took a trip to go visit the place like the weekend before the ED was due because I was like, do I just do it? And like in the end, like I'm so glad I didn't. You definitely feel like a peer pressure to do it because everyone is doing it and you feel like you won't get into a school if you don't. But like I promise that's not true. If I would have ED'd somewhere, like I definitely would not be like going to where I'm going. And like I'm so glad I didn't because again, my opinions changed so much halfway through it. So I was considering EDing to a school. I ended up not doing it just because I didn't really want that level of commitment. And I'm so glad I didn't because at the end, like it was funny, at the end of the process, I realized even if I would have gotten into that school regular decision, I wouldn't have gone, which was a very funny realization. So definitely don't feel like you have to ED. It's great if you do want to, and if you have a top school and that school offers it, go ahead, like totally put it in. But like if not, and if you're just confused, don't. Also, another really quick thing is everything happens for a reason, and like everyone stops caring about the name brand of school after we're all deciding where we're going. Like I remember when I was trying to figure out where I was going to commit to, I was so fixated on the name. I was like, well, how will my friends react if I tell them I commit to this school? Okay, well, how will people react if I tell them I commit to this school? It was like, I was literally like, Jamie, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, it's not about anyone else but yourself. So once everyone commits, anyone tells you where they're going to school, you're just like, oh, congratulations, that's amazing. It's not like, oh, you're going there. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's like, no, no one cares. Like no one cares. But again, everything happens for a reason. So
I love that. And Lulu, what is the one thing you wish you knew then that you know now?
I think I have like 2 things, but the first one was that emails are your really good friend. I think probably as juniors or sophomores too, you already are getting like a million emails about different colleges trying to reach out to you. But the biggest one thing is just read the whole email and scroll all the way through the bottom, because I found a lot of really helpful links like pre-recorded presentations and different things that I really needed to get more information about colleges. And the first time that I read the email, I did not scroll down to the bottom and I missed them. So it sounds really simple, but make sure maybe to set a time where you can actually read your email. Don't just open it without reading the whole thing. And then something else that I really wish I knew was to not be afraid to reach out for help and ask different people if you don't know how to do something. Talk to your friends, talk to your advisors. Like you don't have to be the one who knows how to do everything. It's better if you just ask someone, how do I open the Common App? How do I do this? As opposed to struggling on your own. And even this year was hard since we were more virtual and isolated, but definitely try to not separate from your friends through the process. Definitely don't compare yourself to them. But if they can help you in any way, I feel like they are a huge support system as well throughout the process. So just make sure you stay in touch with them and you check in on them as well to see how they're doing, because it is a tough time.
Like Anna said, you want to go through the hard parts together. That's why you're friends. We had one, I think this will be a very quick question. One last question came into the Q&A. How many colleges did each of you apply to? Oh, I should pick one. Let's go Anna, Jamie, Lulu again.
Okay, yeah, interesting thing that happened to me. Had like scheduled to do 11 schools. And then after I applied to some and I actually heard back from some schools already, I decided to not submit another application to one of the schools, partially because there was just a lot of supplementals and I was overwhelmed and I didn't want to write them all in the weeks that I had to do them. And like the application cost a ton of money that I was like, and then I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I just don't think at this point in this stage where I've heard back from these places and I've got these schools to go, I just don't see myself, even if I guess I kind of did the whole thing of like, if this place accepted me, would I go or consider going? And I said, no, I wouldn't, and threw that one out. And then I ended up doing 10 and I was totally satisfied. I got into 5 and then the other 5 was either waitlist or rejection, and everything worked out. So yeah, 10 was great.
That's great. Jamie.
That's a great question. So I applied to, I think it was 18 schools, and I
Oh,
think that
that's a
was,
lot of essays, Jamie.
yeah, actually, so if I'm counting with essays, like all the schools that required essays, I think it was 12. But like it was still like a lot of the UC schools. I think I applied to 4 UCs, and like
Right.
that's all one application. But like definitely don't apply to 18. It was a bad decision. I was so exhausted. And also don't add schools at the end. I added like 3 schools at the end just like on a whim. And it was like, why did I do that? I don't know. Because you don't realize how much it is. Like it is expensive. It's like $70 for an application.
Yep.
So if you don't see yourself going to a school, like I applied to like, I think like just because it was like, oh, it doesn't have an essay, I'll just apply. It's like, no, do not do that to yourself, because you
Right.
know, it's just pointless. So yeah, don't apply to 18. Definitely.
Yeah, I think I see a lot of those panic responses at the end, like just a worry. And you want to remind yourself, hey, I've got a good plan. I made good decisions for the last 6 months. I don't need to suddenly question all those decisions now. Jamie, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second, and you can tell me it's not a good question if you want me to. But one of the reasons that I always think it's a challenge to apply to 18 schools is that you get into too many. And then you have to figure out where to go to school. You know, Anna just said like, and I know because I was with her on it. Anna still had some questions of how do I choose amongst these schools that I got into. So was that tricky for you that you had now in a month, you had to make a decision that had been tough to narrow down the year before?
Yes. And this is probably going to sound like the most like annoying thing to hear, but it was like, yes, I had to make a very hard decision because I had too many schools to decide on. Like it's like, oh, he has so many schools, how can he possibly decide? Like, but it's like, no, like I committed the day before it was due. Like I think you have to commit May 1st. I committed on April 30th, I think it was.
Right.
So like, yeah, I was very conflicted. It made the decision incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
I think I was picking from 6 schools or something like that, and it was just like so not helpful. So
yeah, it seems like such a good idea, and then it puts a lot of pressure on you.
and so many of them were the same, and I was just like, they're all the same type of school. It's just
So Jamie, I just want to say one thing that you did do during that process. It came down to 2 schools and you went to visit both. Isn't that right?
yes.
So
I did.
it sort of narrowed, and then you went and put your feet on the soil and walked around, right?
Yes.
That
No,
helped.
it's nice because like even though it was a pandemic, I was able to visit both, and I know that's not always like you're
Right.
not always able to do that, but if you can, like definitely do that, just because like I feel like there's so many times where I was like, oh, this is a great looking school like on paper, and then you go and it's just like not really what it like seems like it is. So if you can, like definitely visit, like it's super helpful.
If I can just one thing on that too is like I watched, at least we were lucky enough that with the pandemic, like all of these videos, all these video guided tours, all the info sessions came out. All the videos I saw when I visited the campus in person, nothing like the video. So to what Jamie said, definitely visit if it comes down to 2, 3, whatever. Try and visit the school because nothing like the video. Any campus was nothing like the virtual whatever. So yeah.
That is fascinating. And Lulu, how about you?
Yeah, I think I did also about 10 or 11 schools, but something that I found through the process was the schools that I liked the most, I felt the essays were stronger because I was sort of putting more, I don't know if it was time or energy or passion into them. So I could tell sort of which schools, maybe I was going to get into more because my essays were better. I was doing a better job on them. So I would maybe just emphasize that there's no like real magic number, but looking back, I would say quality over quantity. It definitely, if you can make your essays as strong as possible and maybe just do less, go for it because it'll definitely show to a school, if you're not as passionate about it, if you didn't do as much research through the essays. And so you might leave that spot for someone else who that's their dream school instead. So I would just choose the ones that you want to go to really carefully. And if you really love a school, then go apply to it.
Those were such great pieces of advice. Anna, Jamie, and Lulu, I'm really so impressed. Thank you for your time. I truly know that the weeks around graduation are incredibly busy and you mostly want to see other teenagers and not hang out with me and Maureen. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you to our guest who asked us questions for all of this. Is just a really thoughtful hour. We will have our next town hall on Thursday, June 24th at 7 p.m. when Maureen Delaney and essay specialist Fatima Bojani will be discussing the ins and outs of the college essay. So we have set ourselves up nicely for that tonight. I hope everyone is really launching a lovely, peaceful, relaxing, and warm, fun summer. I wish all of you the very best. Have a great evening.
Happy graduation.
Happy graduation.